All right, so just a real quick review of the IXL assignments. I'm going over the graph translations of sine functions. So basically what you're doing is you're given a function, a sine or cosine function, and you need to graph it based on what you see. Now, first, before you start, you got to pick the correct one. So this is sine, which sine starts at 0, whereas cosine starts at 1. So we pick this one for sine. Now I need to look at the numbers that are involved here. So it says -1 on the end, right? So that's the d value. So that means it's going to shift down. Now, in order to shift it left or right or up and down, what I'm going to do is use this dot right here in the middle. This kind of shifts your midline. So I drag it down, boom. Now, the amplitude is 1. There's no number in front, so I don't need to change this. This is the one that adjusts your amplitude. Okay, so that's the first one. Okay, so now here, it would be the same thing. So let's skip ahead and see what else we would deal with here. All right, so now this one, there's no number being added on the outside, and there's no number being multiplied in the front. So there's no shift, vertical shift. There's no amplitude change, but there's a change on the inside of the parentheses, which means we're going to be shifting left and right. Okay, so first, it's a sine function, so I'm going to click this one. Now it says plus 180. Now I want you to think back to when we were graphing before. If it was plus 180, that means the shift isn't to the right, which is the positive direction. It's actually the opposite. X is a liar, so we shift to the left 180. So again, you click on this one and hold this button to shift. So I go shift back 180. And if you'll actually notice that it's literally almost looks like the same graph. However, if I shift back, you'll notice that it goes up first here and then down. Whereas if I shift over 180, now it goes down to the bottom and then back up for that one. Okay, so here it's the exact opposite, right? So if it's minus 180, we're going to do the same thing, but now we're going to shift to the right. And it actually ends up being pretty much the same graph as the last one there. Okay, now we've got a couple things going on. First, we have a vertical shift, and we also have a phase shift left and right. Okay, so first let's do the sine graph. Let's vertical shift it down 1. And then remember this is plus 45, so that means we'll go left 45. So left 45. And notice how it's negative 90 there, so that means the middle in between would be 45 degrees there. Oh, and I actually made a mistake here, and I realized, and it's actually good for you guys to see, if you look closely, 90 degrees is here, right? And it takes 1, 2, 3 units to get to 90, which means that each of these units is 30 degrees. So what I should have done is actually brought this over to here. That would have been actually 45. So this is actually 60 degrees because it goes by 30, 60, and then 90. So should have put it just a little bit over to the right. As you can see, here's the correct answer. You can see they put it kind of right here in between the second unit there, okay? All right, so let's skip this one. Okay, so here's a similar one. So here we're going to first do sine. We're going to shift it down to -2. Then it's plus 180, so I'm going to shift it back to the left. And there we go. Okay, so here, again, another sine graph. I'm going to shift up 1, and then it says a phase shift of 540. Okay, 540. Well, first I'd shift it up, right? Well, it's saying to go 540, which means go left 540, but this only goes 360 degrees. So how am I going to do that? Well, you got to remember that degrees repeats itself every 360, right? So what I could do is then find a coterminal angle to 540, and then that will be the same thing. Okay, so let's change 440 degrees. So basically, if the shift is bigger than your graph, then you're going to want to reduce it down to another positive coterminal angle. So I'm going to subtract 360 here. Okay, so minus 360, this is going to be, what, 280, 180? So it ends up being 180, all right? Now, you got to remember that it said plus 540, right? So basically now it's plus 180. So you got to treat it that way, which means that we're not going to shift right. We're still going to shift to the left. So we're going to shift 180 degrees to the left right there. Okay. Okay, so here's a good one. So here's we got a few things going on. So we'll end on this one. So here, first let's choose sine. Let's start with the phase shift. Now the phase shift, you always want to start with your shifts first, okay, and then we can mess with the amplitude and all that other stuff. All right, so first we're going to shift down 2. Okay, so that's the D value. Then we're going to go 180 degrees. X is the liar, so to the left. So 180 degrees to the left. Now the amplitude is different because we have a number being multiplied times sine. So now the amplitude is 3. Now here my midline is at -2. So that means my midline or the peak or the valley should be 3 units away from that. So that'd be 1, 2, 3. So that means I need to bring this all the way up to 1. All right. One more thing. Now, if you guys see that negative, that means it's going to flip this graph. So in order to flip the graph, I'm going to use that same button I used to change the amplitude. And now I'm going to basically drag that down to switch it. Now, what's important though is as I drag it down, make sure I end up at the same, oops, let me start that over, messed that up. Let me start over here. So let's bring down shift to 2, then over to 180, and back up to 1 for the amplitude of 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift this down. Now notice down here, it comes down to -5. So when I bring this down, I'm going to make sure I go down that far. And notice how I kind of like am jumping over to the left and right. So also make sure that you're going straight down as you go. And if you need to start over, you can always just push this button again. Okay. All right. So that should be good. All right.